Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Council of Governors meeting. I can see we're already recording, so you'll be familiar with that by now. We do it for the purpose of being able to put the recording up should any members of the public not be able to join us in real time and wish to view the meeting subsequently. So you'll know and appreciate all that by now. I can see also that Nicola's moved into Angie's office, albeit in a socially distanced, masked way. So that's great, Nicola. It'll be much easier for you to contribute to the meeting from there, I feel sure, and less frustrating all around with the better signal available. So a very warm welcome. We've got a number of apologies, including from Denise Remchuk, our lead governor, who's is discommoded with some back pain today. I'm really pleased to report that this wouldn't have been Denise's last meeting, because we have another meeting in December. Because I would have been it would have been a shame to miss the opportunity to do that properly, but we will have one, so that's good. I wonder if I could prevail upon you, Nicola, to share with us the other apologies we have from today.
Yeah, of course. I've got apologies from Anne Margette, Deborah Watson, Denise Remchuk, Janice Smith, Martin Rose, Mick Portman, Pat Boyle, Fiona Wilson and Keith Nurcombe.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we've
Excuse me, Chair. Watson, I am in attendance. I don't know where you've got my apologies from. They certainly weren't submitted, and I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Thanks.
Very good. We've got declarations of interest as the next item on the agenda, and we've had notification earlier of two changes to the register of interests. Norman Shaw should be listed as a director of his golf club, and Lynn Torrey should have reference to her role on the board of Derbyshire Voluntary Action removed as she stands down at the end of her term. But very pleased to report that we've reached an agreement that Lynn will continue as the volunteer partner representative for the remainder of her term on the Trust Council of Governors. So thank you for that, Lynn, and thank you for the notifications of the change to the register. I shall pause in case there's anybody else who needs to add anything in terms of the register of interest. No? Well then, in terms of the preliminaries, just say a very warm welcome. I don't think, Krishna, this is your first Council of Governor meeting. I think you might have put in an appearance at previous ones, but it's certainly your first whilst, you know, having got your feet somewhat under the table. So a very warm welcome to you. And I notice you've already got two papers on the agenda later today. So we look forward to hearing from you then.
Thank you,
I can't see Berenice, but I anticipate that you're on the call, Berenice. So if you say something, we will all get a look at you maybe. Not now. Maybe Berenice hasn't quite joined the call, but we will look forward to hearing from her later in the meeting, and a warm welcome in any event. The next slot we've got are questions from members of the public. Any member of the public on the call can use the chat facility. It's not quite a chat facility, but it's a question facility. And those questions will be relayed to me by Emily. Can I just check with you, Emily? Oh no, I've just had a message, none yet. Okay, well, we normally take questions from members of the public now. Needless to say, in these new and strange times, we're very happy for questions from members of the public to come in as you hear us have our discussions of the various agenda items. And what we will do is we'll return to any questions you do raise before the end of the meeting. So there'll be a further opportunity then if anybody wants to raise anything. Good afternoon, Berenice. We were just warmly welcoming you, and do feel free to say hello so everyone can hear your dulcet northeast tones.
Thanks very much, Helen. Thanks for the welcome, and hi everybody. I'm Berenice Groves, the new Chief Operating Officer for Chesterfield. It's great to be with you.
And feelings are completely mutual. So we look forward to hearing from you a bit later on. That brings us to our first substantive item, which is Angie's Chief Exec briefing. So over to you, please, Angie.
Thanks, Helen, and afternoon, everyone. And thank you from me to all of you for supporting us as well as you continue to do during some very challenging times. Since we last met as a council, we've gone up to level 4 in our COVID response nationally. So I'm going to ask Berenice in a few minutes to update you things at COVID, because as always, the minute I wrote my chief exec report, it was out of date. So we'll come back to all things COVID. But I thought it worthwhile just pulling out a couple of points from my report. Firstly, around our strategy and the progress that we're making on that. And I'm going to ask Tony to update you all on that in a second. And firstly, I just wanted to make sure everyone's up to speed with where we're at on our Joined Up Care Derbyshire submission to be an ICS. And Helen, I don't know whether you just want to update us on that, if that's okay.
Very happy to. Would you like me to start there, Angie?
Yeah, I'm starting in reverse instead of the operational to strategic. I thought we'd do a strategic to operational today.
Very good. Just a brief update then on Joined Up Care Derbyshire. As you know, we were keen to be one of the next wave to go from being a STP to being an integrated care system, an ICS. We applied some months ago. Quite encouragingly, we've been asked in the last few days to submit some further information, and that response has gone back. And we've always been led to believe that the kind of go, no-go decision will be in the month of November. So assuming that, you know, the paperwork is all in order and we've satisfied the various requirements and criteria, we anticipate being a Derbyshire ICS by the end of this month. So we'll obviously keep you posted on that, and fingers crossed on that front. And the other item I'd like to share with you, and some of you who've been involved or followed the board discussions will know we had a really excellent board development day on our approach to digital. And as part of that, colleagues from Joined Up Care Derbyshire joined us because they were interested in the round, but very particularly because under Keith and Lee's good offices, Chesterfield have been leading on behalf of Joined Up Care Derbyshire on creating a single shared integrated patient care record. And this has been something that's been attempted many times in the past. It's obviously a very big prize and needed now more than ever. The item that came to the Chesterfield board for approval on behalf of Joined Up Care Derbyshire was an approval in principle, so we can proceed to appoint consultants to take this work forward in anticipation of having an integrated care record for all patients across Derbyshire in at some point next year. So I think that was a really significant step, and a huge thank you to Lee, Keith and to other colleagues who've been involved in moving that forward. So I think that'll probably do me for Joined Up Care Derbyshire, Angie, so I'll pass back to you.
Do you want to take questions as we go, or shall I finish and then pick up? I just saw Mike's hand fly up.
Ah, very good. Well, let's go to Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as you know, Helen, there's a board meeting of Joined Up Care Derbyshire this Thursday, which I'm covering for. So I'll give a feedback to that when it's completed.
Thank you very much, Mike. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Helen. So if we go on to our strategy, which work in progress on our 2020-25 strategy, and Tony, would you mind updating Council too, please?
Yep, thanks, Angie. So you'll recall that we've had various workshops developing the vision of our strategy onto one page. That's progressed further with a number of forums within the trust with various staff members discussing, not actually just sharing, but discussing the various aspects of our strategy in terms of do the vision make sense, does the mission make sense. So we've had, and the divisions have taken that forward within their own areas as well as some of the corporate areas. So there's several hundred comments come back to that effect. We've handed out, I think it's something like 500 copies of the strategy to patients and carers for their views, and I think Sarah's certainly received about a third of those back, so that's going well. So we shared, I think we shared last week at HRT, board timeout, strategy day, how that is progressing as a version, but there's still some work going on with that. And then I'm putting my mind now to our approach to how we bring our strategy alive and start to work it through. So I'm very much into a workshop, big conversation approach on the various aspects. Myself and Hal have had some tentative starting conversations with Derby hospitals and continued our conversations in South Yorkshire as to how we might work together, much closer together on developing our approach to our clinical services. And certainly we intend to reintroduce the idea of, a modern day look at what are the core services that a DDH like us need to sustain and maintain and deliver locally, and what might we partner in. And again, the philosophy of workshops and involving various people like yourselves and the clinical areas, etc., in debating some of that subject matter. And there's like I say, there's a framework and a program of work, and just putting my mind to, and over the next coming weeks, we'll develop that and start to kick that off. I think I'll draw breath at that, Angie, on that.
Thanks, Tony. It's really helpful. I can't see any hands at the moment, so I'll carry on, but please interrupt us if something comes to mind. I'm going to ask Berenice to give us today's position on our COVID inpatients and a bit of an update. We gave out the October position on restoration and recovery, but again, clearly that position changes by the day. And Berenice, Zoe's just texted me to say she will be joining a few minutes late, but now she's our lateral flow testing lead, and she'll be able to give us the hot off the press position on testing. So apologies from Zoe, she will be with us shortly, but can I hand over to yourself, Berenice? Thank you.
I am here now, so.
Oh, well done, thank you.
Thanks for that, Angie, because I was going to cover testing in the update of COVID, so I'll hand over to Zoe at the appropriate time. Yeah, just to say, it is a fluctuating picture with regards to COVID, and there's clearly a lot of work being done on site, mainly around the overall escalation plan and making sure that the right clinical areas are available for the appropriate patients and pathways. And just that context for everybody, this is like delivering hospitals within hospitals, the amount of pathways that you need to deliver, and making sure that patients are separated out into the appropriate area. So the guys have done a fantastic job of allocating specific areas for COVID patients. We currently have 52 in the hospital, and that's an improving picture because it was increasing up to an over 60 last week. Within that number, today we have 11 that's in critical care. And again, that number again has fluctuated up. So we had 14 last week. And just to bear in mind that the changes that have happened on site has created additional ITU capacity of 2 8-bedded units. So it didn't leave us much capacity to be able to escalate up. We also have seen our non-COVID ITU capacity strain over the last couple of weeks, but it's positive to hear that actually has reduced slightly, and we've only got 3 of our own patients in today. As a result of that, we are being asked to support some of the other areas, so likes of Nottingham, to make sure that their specialist services can continue. We're being asked to take one of their patients to support our wider community. We've designated Elizabeth and Murphy as our main COVID areas, with our query COVID going into what is a ward called Hasland. And we review that on a daily basis and look at those pathways and look at how we can use our emergency medical unit as well to support some of that flow through. also, this is all very linked to the restoration plan. So obviously, being able to respond to the increase in COVID numbers coming through certainly starts to impact on what you can do around restoration. One of the areas that we needed to put on standby was our PACU, one of our recovery areas, to free that up, so that if we needed some additional bed capacity, we could do that. As a result of that, some cancellations of activity had to take place. And not only that, it's not just about having the beds, it's about having the workforce. So a number of people have had to be reallocated from the ward areas to support that functionality in critical care. And I mean, you can't imagine what it must be like working in those environments with hoods on top of supporting patients at that critical care level. So it's really important that the staff recognise and are able to be supported in that way. As I said, that then leaves you a bit of an issue around the elective capacity. So one of the things they did was they reviewed the day ward, which was Holywell, and put some adaptations in place, so that's now able to take some inpatients and start to get some better throughput through Holywell, to make sure that our elective programme gets back on board. We are seeing an 8% reduction on the overall activity that was required for October. We haven't got the validated figures going forward as yet, but what we're seeing is that Chesterfield had a plan for their restoration and recovery, and we are overachieving on that plan. What we're not doing is we're not achieving the 100% that nationally they wanted us to achieve. And we again just need to bear in mind that Chesterfield's performance and activity was working at such a high level last year. For you to achieve 100% of what you were doing last year is so much harder than one that obviously was cancelling loads and loads of electives this time last year. So it's just about where our baselines are. So it's really positive to hear that they're actually overachieving on that capacity. The final bit just to say on that is around the outpatients. So we have seen a reduction in the new outpatient referrals being managed through non-face-to-face methods, and a slight reduction in the referrals for any follow-ups. So there's quite a bit of work being done around that. There is some real rationale and justifications definitely around the new patients as to why we would see such a reduction, because you were one of the best performing across the country for your new outpatients. But we do need to increase those, so we do need to get that activity improved and get it closer to the 30%. It's sitting around 27% at the moment. So happy to take any questions or clarification.
Thank you very much, Berenice. We'll just have a little pause there. Greg, do you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, Berenice. The 30% stroke 27%, is that same day emergency care, or is that elective? I didn't quite understand the distinction.
Sorry, no, that's for the outpatient new referrals, right. Non-face-to-face. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Berenice, do you have a diagnosis? Because I mean, we were just magnificent in the early days about shifting all this, and we were getting these lovely emails from consultants who'd previously told us this was impossible to do, that it was the best day of their life. And now we're kind of below where we should have been a couple of years ago. You know, what's really sitting under it all?
So I think the nervousness of people actually coming into an organisation, I think again there was a lot more acceptance that they wanted a phone call for that initial initial consultation, but what you actually find is a lot of these areas do need some sort of examination, and we also still have to do a lot of work around the kind of video conferencing. So again, being able to kind of have that face to face in a different way, we've got a lot of work to do around that. So as a result, they are bringing a lot more people in so that they can actually have that, you know, they can view exactly what is required. And examples such as biopsies, etc., you absolutely can't do that without being here. But we are delving right into the detail of what we need to do to increase that.
Very good, thank you. Where would you like to go next, Angie?
Does Zoe want to do the testing update for us?
Yeah, thanks, Angie. So Berenice and I joined a call late on Friday where we learned that the national rollout of asymptomatic staff testing starts this week. So there's been a pilot in 34 trusts around the country. Close to us, Derby and Rotherham have been involved. So this is the twice weekly testing at home of asymptomatic staff. With lots of reasons they're doing that now: increased prevalence, outbreaks is one of the key reasons, so identifying the issues and nipping it in the bud effectively before people who are asymptomatic are spreading. So that's the call that Berenice have just been on, well, a little bit late to this call, our internal meeting around that, because obviously there's quite a lot to sort out in terms of how we receive, how we store the tests, how we support people, particularly non-clinical people. So it's a nasal swab test that you can do at home, but if you've never done that before, you might need a little bit of support the first time to make sure that you're doing it properly, how we communicate that with our members of staff, how we record, how we have an IT system, etc., etc. Yes, there's quite a lot of detail still to be worked through, but that is something that once we know when we're going to receive them, which should be sometime this week, we'll be starting to roll out. In terms of who that covers, the steer nationally is to align that with your flu vaccine programme in terms of the people who are classed as frontline for flu vaccine recording purposes. And our allocation will be around 3,900 is what we've submitted as our figure.
Very good, thank you, Zoe. Any questions for Zoe around that? Berenice?
It wasn't so much a question, but just to add so that people know that the vaccination work we're looking at a kind of December date, being ready to be able to accommodate. So the planning works on around that. And I don't think Zoe gives herself enough credit for the amount of welfare support that her team and as a consequence others do across this organisation. So there's a huge programme of work going out there and supporting staff with their welfare during this period.
We had a number of questions in the Governor's pre-meeting when we were talking informally that relates to either flu or vaccine, which might be just helpful to put in now rather than keep to later as we're on that sort of topic. The first was our flu vaccine take-up doesn't seem to be as high as in previous years, so colleagues would appreciate understanding what we're doing to improve the uptake from our current 78% to an even better place. There was a question about whether it's essential to have a flu jab before you have the vaccine. So we appreciate there has to be a period of time elapsed between a flu jab and a vaccine, but you know, technically or strictly, do you need to have the flu jab before you have the vaccine? And then there was a report from Norman about how he, through Joined Up Care Derbyshire, has volunteered to support people in the vaccine programme, not clinically, but for example, driving or other sorts of allied support. So obviously we've thanked Norman for doing that, but also for bringing that opportunity to our attention, because it's going to be a big and collective effort as we anticipate vaccine rollout. So I think they were the comments that came up and the questions that came up mainly. Oh, there was one other from Jan that she submitted in writing. She can't be with us today, which is about testing for discharge, and are we understanding of and fully compliant with the requirements around that, particularly for people who are not being discharged to their own homes, but to care homes and elsewhere. So could I, Jessica, maybe you might want to come back on some of those now, please.
So if I can ask Krishna to come in on flu and then Berenice to answer the discharge question. And just to be fair, that Krishna wasn't here last year at this time. I'm pretty confident we're probably at a similar rate, if not higher, for this point in the year on our flu vaccination. Normally that runs right through to the new year. And last week we were top of the table in the region in terms of uptake. But clearly the potential for the COVID vaccine really puts the pressure on around that flu. So if I can ask Krishna to pick up the here and now and where we're going to go for the rest of the year, if that's okay, Krishna.
Thank you. Just to assure everybody, we're actually doing really well with the uptake of flu vaccine. We're currently second in the league table across the whole of the region with 76%, and we're obviously aiming to be higher. Generally, we do that return. The return for the flu sort of season, if you like, and the return is generally beginning of end of January, beginning of February. So we are ahead of the game and doing very, very well. With regard to whether you can have, if you don't have a flu vaccine, would you have a, would you be eligible? I think the answer is yes, but I can clarify that. But I would actually put it back. If you've not had your flu vaccine, why haven't you had your flu vaccine? And why would you have a COVID vaccine if you've not had a flu vaccine, would be the message and the pushback. So we have been doing that positive messaging. We don't know, we are gearing up for the December the 1st for a COVID vaccine. We have no idea whether we will get sort of the vaccine procurement and sent through to us to be able to do it, but we've got all our plans in place to be able to deliver that to our staff. And we absolutely have to make sure that we've got that from an appointment system, because it will be two vaccines 28 days apart to deliver to staff, and there has to be a period of time from having their flu vaccine to be able to be eligible at the right time to have that COVID vaccine. So I can come back to everybody about whether it negates if you've not had the flu. I don't think it does, but I'll just get clarification from the microbiologists, and I think we're doing really, really well at the moment from the flu vaccine, just to provide that assurance.
Thank you very much. Tony, please.
Yeah, Helen, I would just add a comment against the flu stats. 76% exceptional performance, but that's 76% of a bigger volume. If you recall, the criteria widened, and I think we were doing at least 2/3 more vaccinations. So that's a percentage of a much bigger volume. That's what I'd add to that.
Thank you. And a helpful comment from Jeremy also on that theme in the chat. So thank you for that, Jeremy. Derek. Derek, you might be on mute.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Thank you, excellent. Derek. Yeah, I read in the paper this morning a chap writing to the effect that he thought the COVID vaccinations should be made mandatory. And he particularly referred to the health service as well. I don't know what response to that would be, whether it would be workable or morally right or whatever.
Well, I think with my other hat on, we would find ourselves in human rights litigation, long past the point of the peak efficacy of population vaccination, Derek. But no doubt a whole load of issues along these lines will rage over the coming months.
It was in the context, I think, of achieving herd immunity, which you need a certain percentage of the population to have been vaccinated, and falling short of that would sort of render the whole, this chap was suggesting, render the whole exercise useless, as it were.
Yes.
Could I answer that then? Could I come in there at that point? It's Zoe. I guess just to sort of add to what you were saying, Helen. Certainly, the view on the national people calls has been that they won't be making it mandatory for some of the reasons that you've said. Instead, it'll be much more about the messaging around encouraging people to have it in a similar way that we do for flu. You know, for yourselves, for your families, for your patients, for the community, etc., etc. So that's the position that will be taken.
Right. Thank you.
I think it'll also open up an opportunity, hopefully nationally, but also locally, for us to be encouraging people to make wise decisions about their exposure to the virus, you know, because we'll come out of a lockdown hopefully shortly. There'll be different levels of restrictions subsequently. But, you know, if we're in this for the long haul, garnering people's support to do the right thing to protect themselves and others is going to be really important, which suggests we need a kind of high engagement sort of approach, doesn't it? You know, rather than necessarily a kind of enforcement one. But again, a lot to play out on all of that. Kate, please.
Thank you, Helen. It was just a piece of information, actually. We had a Labour group meeting last night at the council, and we were advised that the assembly rooms, which is the rooms above the market hall and the winding wheel, we have been asked to book them out for a period of 6 weeks for the purpose of vaccination against COVID. We haven't yet been given a start date other than can we clear any bookings from the end of November. So it looks like you'll be going to the assembly rooms or the winding wheel, and the numbers for that exceed the population of Chesterfield. So again, it looks like we're going to be asked to pull in from other areas too. I just thought that might be of interest.
Well, it's cheerful thought, isn't it, Kate? We might get to have a little dance while we stand in line for our vaccination and remind ourselves of happier times. So that will be good. I hope also that I shan't be breaking any confidences in a public forum, Kate, but I know Angie's had an approach from your chief executive with a request of how it is the council might best mark and express thanks and appreciation for the efforts of our staff colleagues during the period of the pandemic. And I can't begin to describe to you, Kate, how grateful we are. Not surprisingly, you know, with the population having had as tough a time as they've had over the last few months, there isn't the same spontaneous thanks for our staff colleagues for reasons we completely understand and certainly not expecting anything. But the offer by the council to acknowledge our colleagues in this way is hugely appreciated, and I'm sure will be a huge fillip and morale boost at this time. So thank you.
Well, can I just say that's come from both sides of the chamber too. That's not just a Labour offer, that's across the council. So, you know, it's heartfelt and indeed needed.
Well, thank you, and thank you also for acknowledging your colleagues in that way. Derek, is that an old hand or a new hand?
It's an old hand, I think.
An old hand, okay. We shouldn't call it an old hand, should we? We call it a legacy hand. Very good. Okay, Luke.
Sorry, I wasn't meant to put my hand up then.
Okay, there was association of ideas, was it? We've got a few on the chat too. So looking like we've enough flu vaccine. Very good. I was on a call with Angie and the chief executive of another trust the other day that should remain nameless. And when an inquiry was made from our national colleagues as what was the most helpful thing they could do to help that trust increase their rate of flu vaccinations, the response was send some vaccine, please. So we're fortunate not to be in that position. So full steam ahead. Very good. So, Angie, I think we've done justice to those items. Is there anything else you'd like to raise? No. In which case, Berenice.
Yeah, Helen, just to update regarding the discharge process, just to provide some reassurance around the testing. And I think the one that stands out in most people's minds is making sure that any of our care home and nursing home patients are safe, or people that are going into different organisations. It's just to reassure that we do test 48 hours pre-discharge. And there are allocated places for patients to go that are positive. Our local councils have been working, the local authorities have been working with us really well, and are currently signing off a document that allows anybody who is post 14 days COVID to be able to transfer back into their own home address, which will be a real help, because previously they've had to wait until they came back with a negative swab. And as you know, for some people that can be up to 90 days. They can still come back with a positive swab but not infected. So please be reassured that those processes are in place.
Thank you, Berenice. That's really helpful to have had that update in real time. Much appreciated. Very good. So we'll move on now. Thank you for that report, Angie, and all colleagues who contributed, and indeed Governor colleagues for those helpful and insightful lines of questioning. I feel we've got much better sense of where we're up to on a whole range of issues. So thank you for that. The next item is about service transfers. It's been titled in the round, but it has come up on the back of a concern expressed by a couple of governors about what happens when a service that a patient is familiar with being delivered in a certain way gets changed, either in terms of the pathway or in terms of the provider, and how that all works, and in particular how it is communication is maintained through a period of change and uncertainty, and what happens if the service doesn't appear to be at the same sort of level that has previously been enjoyed. So we've had that issue raised in the context of orthotics, but it's obviously a good opportunity for us to look at it more broadly. So with that by way of introduction, Angie, I'll pass across to you, please.
Thanks, Helen. And I just wanted to draw out really the learning from that example that Helen's illustrated, and the conversations that I'd had with the CCG as a result of that, which has been about how we learn, particularly around the communication, because from a patient perspective, the organisation may have transferred the service to another provider, but those patients are still coming in under the Chesterfield roof, and to them it still feels like they're coming to the hospital and that service. And I think there's lessons we've learned around how we communicate both between current provider and new provider, and the CCG have supported me with how we can make those conversations a little more robust ahead of the transfer, but also what measures we use and how we get that real-time feedback, because inevitably there will be some issues with services transferring. So as well as the numbers and the appointments, the impact on our own friends and family tests, for example, and how we actually work through that in a more real time as we transfer the service has certainly been listened to, and I hope, should we be in the same position again, that we've learned how we can pick up some of that communication much better from our patient perspective. So I can see hands flying up already. I don't propose to say much more, and I'm not going to go through the background in the paper. That was just a reminder really around the commissioning of services, but happy to take any questions both in the round and specifically on this service, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Angie. We've got two hands up already, so I'm going to come to Frank and then to David in that order, please.
Yes, thanks, Helen. Yes, I think to fellow governors, it was me that raised this issue with orthotics. My wife was referred to a company called Blatchford's in Derby 3 weeks ago. After numerous phone calls and messages we've left, we still had no contact. So my wife contacted her own doctor, and she's now been referred to the Northern General. She's been an outpatient in orthotics since she was 12, which is over 60 years ago, and not to be notified that orthotics has now been contracted out is very disappointing. And I appreciate that it is being looked into for other patients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. I think that example beautifully illustrates the difficulties we're talking about. So thank you for that. And David, please. Please may take your hand down, Frank, just so I don't get confused.
I'm down.
Thank you.
Yes. Hello, Helen. Good morning.
Hello, David.
Hey, I'm like to follow up really what Frank just said, in that I had thought, and it read very well, that you and Angie had really resolved the matter. But hearing my friend Frank's experience, I'm not sure that it has been done. But I was going to say that this is a problem for the hospital in the future, I would suggest, because it's very important that the hospital continues to support coordination of communication when changes are made. Because if things are going wrong, albeit from Blackford, if it's done in our hospital, the hospital gets the blame. And I've had 2 or 3 people from outside the governors contact me on this particular issue. And it's something that we need to look at very carefully, and particularly in view of Frank's comments, we should not necessarily view it as being resolved. So it is a problem. And my experience is perhaps a little bit different from Frank's. And I had the view that the problem was not with us at all. The problem was with Blatchford's, because they were quite keen to say, go back to your own hospital or go back to your own doctors. And to go back to your own doctors now for something like this is not the most shortest cut, put it that way. So I think you and Angie are congratulated at attending the problem, but it could well be that we need to give a little more squeeze or a little more attention to something like this, because I do know that it's not just Frank's wife and perhaps myself and others. There are others out there that have been messed around, I use the polite word, in a big way, and they've been waiting 6 months. So I would be careful about believing that the matter is resolved.
Thank you. Wise words as ever. I don't think we're under any misapprehension, David, that the problem's solved. And I think it's really important that we get this right in orthotics, not least of all in anticipation of more system level working. And, you know, people will continue to be our patients, you know, irrespective of what point in the pathway they are or which element of which provider within the system, either NHS or otherwise, is looking after them. And I was particularly taken with Angie's comments about us needing to make sure we have leverage over these arrangements, not only in the kind of strict KPIs of the contractual arrangements of how many feet did they see this week or how many orthotic devices did they give out, but also about that whole patient experience piece and the legitimacy of our role in understanding what their impact is on patient experience, and us having a collective sense of accountability and ownership of that. And I think until we get that culture in our minds and those arrangements in place that amplify our ongoing accountability for our patient, irrespective of where they are in the system, we will struggle not only on orthotics but on other services as we continue to make changes. So your counsel will be heeded, David, and we will continue to keep an eye on this and make sure we kind of see it through. Can I come to you next, Luke, please?
Yep, hello. It was just to pass on some concerns from some colleagues as well regarding orthotics. So there've been some concerns kind of just mentioned, and I confirmed with those particular colleagues yesterday, but it was just that perhaps the responsiveness of the orthotics wasn't what it previously was, and they just thought that that was impacting some inpatient pathways and kind of the speed of those patient journeys. So I just said that I would bring it and just pass it on. So thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
And given your day job, Luke, you will see this kind of up close and personally, won't you? And they're often patients, not always, but often patients with a whole load of complex needs, including particular vulnerabilities. So, you know, we really do need to get it right.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'd like to make one other follow-up. I've done that. I'd like to make it just a brief comment referring to your paper, or Angie's paper rather. We do say with Blatchford that the contract is for a 3-year term with the option to extend for a further 2 years. Well, that's very loaded in their favour, is it not? I mean, if they are unsatisfactory for the sake of argument, we don't seem to have an option.
Yeah, well, I think, David, we always have an option. I mean, the issue is that we don't want to find ourselves exercising the option, because when you go into these partnering arrangements, you go in on the hope and expectation that they're going to work, not fail. So whilst I feel absolutely sure we will have a contractual backstop, I think, you know, all your encouragement to us about getting the right measures in place, so we've got an alignment with an alliance partner in a way that perhaps we've got somebody who's taking a more transactional approach to the relationship currently is where the big prize is. But, you know, we take your point about the fact that where that fails, you know, that you do sometimes need to invoke the backstop. So we hope we're not quite there yet, but we will keep you posted as we continue to pursue this with them. Okay, so thanks very much for that. That brings us on, if we may now, please. Just checking we haven't got anything in the chat we need to attend to. No, not at the moment. So we'll move on.
I think Greg might want to come in.
Do you?
Stuff
Okay.
in the chat.
All I've got in the chat from Greg is a full stop, so I presumed he was
Yeah,
triggered.
I didn't know if that was him saying he wanted to come in. Apologies if not.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, my stars are looking like full stops. I apologise for that, Helen. I will put my hand up. I'm still getting used to some meetings preferring hands and some meetings preferring stars. Sorry about that. It was just to say I'm really sorry to hear about the examples of perceived poor care with the orthotics. I think this is a really good example of the joined up care not working particularly well, particularly in terms of comms, and I will be very happy to take that back to the CCG. A few months ago, when the CCG procured this service, it was done in very, very great detail, and Blatchford's were the very best. So if we could feed that back to them via several routes, I'm sure we will get somewhere.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in on that, Greg. So that brings us then next, if we may, to the issues arising from the Governor's pre-meeting. So I'm just going to take you through those. Now, we've done a few, but not many. We talked about issues playing out in social media about people self-diagnosing COVID and the importance of people being referred for a test if they're not sure whether they have it, and indeed members of the public following the advice about what to do in the case that they have it. Not that there's a lot we can do about that, but it was helpful and interesting to notice that we still continue to be challenged in that regard. We had some further discussion on the back of some experiences Lynn has had recently and was kind enough to write to us about the cleaning of wheelchairs. So whilst we noted the encouragement for everyone to take responsibility when they use them, and the porter's agreement to make sure the system was working in the round, we did feel that it would be helpful to come back to executive colleagues to just understand the latest in that regard. Do we kind of have an end-to-end process? Are we at least as good as Aldi, if not better? And how is that all working? I don't know who you'd like to take that, Angie.
So I'm trying to show you Lynn, who I'm office sharing with 3 people. Here's Lynn. Krishna, I know you picked up that action for us. Do you want to just update in terms of the wheelchairs and the measures we're putting in place?
Yeah, I mean, we acknowledged it was thank you very much for actually raising that. We have put a process in place, but as Helen sort of quite rightly points out, it really is that end to end. So whilst we're confident that the wheelchairs are, say, cleaned at the moment, it's, at that point in time, it's making sure, and we have the same issues with commodes on wards, is that at any moment in time, it just needs to be standard operating. When the wheelchair is taken out, we've seen sort of people cleaning the wheelchair, but it's when it's put back into use. So it's just really just doing the spot checks and making sure that those processes that we've put in place are rigorous enough to make sure that at any point in time we have got sort of clean wheelchairs, and did acknowledge the fact that the process wasn't robust to begin with. So thank you very much for raising. I do feel that we have improved those standards, but it's going back and making sure that what we've put in place continues to be embedded.
Isn't it an interesting wider point, Krishna, about learning from different sectors?
Yes. Yeah,
you know, because
right.
you think about a hospital being absolutely all over it, and then you think, well, no, actually, I had a better experience when I went to do my shopping. So there is something to be said about having kind of fresh pairs of eyes on some of our kind of end-to-end infection control processes. But you shouldn't have had to raise it, Lynn, but we're very grateful that you have.
Yeah,
it would be really important. We've had a fabulous record, I say, touching wood, on nosocomial infections in Chesterfield. You know, we absolutely want to make sure that we kind of continue to do well in that regard, and having super spreading wheelchairs would not help in that endeavour at all. So it's really important you raised it. Thank you. So that's that one. The next one, and again, I'm not sure we need any further comment from our executive colleagues, but just to make sure that it's minuted and that you're in the loop. We had that discussion you might have anticipated about Nightingales. Why can't people go to Nightingales if they've got COVID, and then we can do electives in the hospital, or vice versa? You know, to which the answer is there aren't enough staff. To which the answer is, if things escalate much more, perhaps they would be useful in a kind of a reimagined staff-patient ratio. But for now, it's not necessarily proving to be a key part of our COVID response. So we just, I suppose, reflected on that, and certainly not something we haven't rehearsed previously as a board, but just for you to be aware that it's very much also on governors' minds for reasons you'd expect. The next item was about staff uniform. There's been a bit of a story evolving on social media too about staff uniforms, and nothing we haven't reflected on over the years. How much loved those embroidered uniforms were, how people felt a sense of pride, a sense of professional status, a sense of belonging, and perhaps a sense of value from their employer, of having something that they think is not only commensurate with their endeavours, but also perhaps reassuring for patients. I do appreciate that we've had more conversations than hot dinners about the relative merits of this vis-a-vis the cost, vis-a-vis all the rest of it. I'm not going to ask anybody to comment now, but I really, really would like to commend executive colleagues to have another good long think about this. You know, we're talking about what it is we can do to show our thanks and appreciation to staff colleagues. I know this may not be possible, but I think it would be a lost opportunity if it wasn't considered alongside some of the other considerations I know you're having at the moment. So perhaps we could leave that one with you for now. The other one was about losing talent. So where we go through a recruitment process and we have somebody to appoint, and we have the luxurious position of maybe having another one or two who are above the line. The question was from a staff governor about how it is we keep those people warm, and are our recruitment processes sufficiently flexible if the nominated or preferred candidate doesn't take up the role for some reason, that we can just go seamlessly to make an offer subsequently to colleagues that have been above, or candidates I should say, that have been above the line. I don't know if you could comment on that in real time, Zoe.
Yeah, I can do. So I would say, I suppose the honest answer is what actually happens in practice might vary in some pockets of the trust, but the answer is yes, we certainly can be flexible, as long as it's not kind of 2 years later or as long as it's within a sensible time period that would be appropriate, equitable, etc. Then yeah, I've certainly known about examples where people have talked to my HR colleagues and we've said, yeah, that's completely appropriate.
Oh, sorry, I've just lost you all. I'm having another security clearance moment. I seem to have more security on this device than I've need. So excuse me, once I get a code, I will be able to get you all back online. Ah, very good. That's really helpful, Zoe. I mean, I feel sure that this particular example will have been raised because that's probably not what's happened in this particular case.
Yeah,
so if you'd be kind enough to perhaps circle back around with Janice just to find out if it would be helpful for us to explain this somewhere in the trust.
Absolutely. I was going to say, if whoever it was wants to get in contact, was it Jan? Yeah, I'll contact Jan.
That should be great. Thank you. Now, Berenice, earlier you answered the question about testing on discharge, which was really helpful. Another question that was raised more or less in the same breath on a separate but perhaps not unrelated issue is about our compliance with and use of the RESPECT process and how that is working out through COVID. Somebody wants to come in?
Do you want me to go?
That's fine. I was just going to say Helen's caught us out on that one because I haven't got the compliance numbers, so I need to go and collect them. So Krishna, if you have got the answer in front of you, that'd be great.
I haven't got the answer, as in the compliance numbers. What I have got is talking to the clinical teams. It certainly has been something from generally sort of nationwide from a COVID perspective, that the use and appropriate use and continued appropriate use of RESPECT forms has really seen an upturn, and we continue to see that. So we had, Hal and myself sort of met with clinical teams when we were doing the accreditation programme. We had those same sort of conversations about the use of RESPECT forms and supporting patients and making sure that we've got clear decision making for all patients. But Berenice, I haven't got those details about audits and that type of thing, and that's something that I can certainly see where we are with that and feedback.
Brilliant, thank you.
That will be great, thank you. Then we have the car park. I keep meaning to ask about this, but I haven't. I drive by and then I forget, but Margaret helpfully raised it. You know that lovely new car park we have that was with where the bike shop was? We're presuming it's shut because we don't have the same footfall at the hospital, and in which case, why do we keep turning on the lights? Because that must be quite expensive.
And I haven't got the answer to why we keep turning on the lights, so I'll go away and ask. But yeah, certainly in terms of not needing to, because we haven't had an issue with car parking and footfall, dare I hang on to my desk and not jinx us, then we haven't done. But it is all all ready to use as and when we need to. And I'll check on the lights.
Thank you, very good. We're not expecting you to turn them out personally when you pass in the evenings, but just a general inquiry.
I'll start parking there and then I can turn them off when I go home.
You go out. And then we've already touched on flu jabs, but the point of the flu jab that we didn't touch on is that we might just need to check with colleagues in RPC that everything, particularly Ashgate, everything's working as it should, because when patients are making inquiries, apparently they've been told not to do anything until they get their letter, and there seems to be some vulnerable groups that might reasonably have expected a letter, if not an appointment, that haven't yet had them. So I think that's just one we need to take away and follow up with RPC colleagues, if we may, please. Number 8 is to be advised that Judy's on the case about TV coverage, not in the interest of Chesterfield Royal being vain and liking to admire ourselves on the news, albeit a bit of that mightn't be bad, but the more serious point altogether about public health messages in respect of North East Derbyshire, where there seems to be kind of a bias in terms of the coverage, either kind of looking south or looking north, as indeed you and I were talking about as recently as this morning, Angie. And you know, the population of North East Derbyshire kind of geographically, I suppose, falls between a few places, but that doesn't mean that our populations don't need to be advised about rising incidence or any of that good stuff. So Judy is in regular dialogue with her MP to that end. So thank you for bringing us up to speed. We're on the final run now. We had a number from Norman, some of which we've touched on, but I'm discombobulated to discover that there may be good practice taking place in Doncaster that's not being emulated in Chesterfield. That there's a buddying arrangement going on in the current climate between governors and NEDs. I think this came up on the back of the providers virtual conference for governors last week. It looks on the surface of it to be very much like some good practice, and if indeed it is, we'd like a bit of good practice too. And so maybe we could add that to the list of thinking about whether that's a good suggestion that kind of bridges this gap about people feeling connected to the trust at a time when inevitably we're having to do more remote working. So thanks to Norman for raising that. Somewhat disappointingly, we heard that there has yet to be any follow-up with us facilitating Norman giving some feedback, EMAS, which we had thought was in hand, but again, we'll take an action to pursue that outside of this meeting. And then last, but by no means least, a lot of there was some feedback from Nominations Committee and a lot of encouragement about the importance of governor induction continuing to be as high a standard as we can make it and have previously had the privilege of experiencing. Nicola puts in place a fabulous induction programme. It's going to have to be a bit different working remotely, but governors are very keen that we do what we can, and as indeed is Nicola. So you know, there'll be more on that front before too much longer. So I think that will convey to our executive colleagues who weren't in the pre-meeting chat with governors the richness of that conversation. It was a really good opportunity to canter over a whole host of issues, a number of which will make a real difference to patient experience and indeed safety. So thank you all very much for raising those with us. Much appreciated. New Teams notifications. So nothing there. I think we need to pick up immediately. In which case we will just go to the next agenda item, which is governor feedback. So can I check, are there any items of governor feedback? Perhaps Margaret or Norman would like to talk about your trip to the virtual providers event.
Yes, I can tell you a bit about that. We both went 2 different days. It was over a 3-day period this time. So Norman attended the first day and I attended the last day. But I'm sure there were some common themes in both of them, I suspect. It was well worth attending. The day that I covered, the main speaker was talking about mental health, and not just in terms of mental health within mental health trusts, but in terms of the broader aspects of mental health, particularly following on from COVID. And it was a bit worrying, really, that she's suggesting that there will be a big upturn in people suffering from various sorts of anxiety and other mental health issues related to the COVID, and that trusts need to be aware of that, even acute trusts, and put in place whatever they can to support people, not least staff. Obviously, I know we've got a good programme for supporting our staff, but she talked a lot about one thing that she did mention quite a lot was sort of connecting with voluntary organisations in terms of as providers of support for people who are struggling, which I don't know if we are doing that much of, but there are some voluntary organisations out there that can perhaps give us support. And one thing that she did say though is don't bombard staff with too much choice, because it can actually be counterproductive, which I thought was an interesting point. But sort of made the point that helplines can often be very, very useful, and people can then pick what actually works for them to give them the support. So it's quite a sort of interesting talk. And then we did talk a bit about governor engagement, and as I say, there were various ideas that we're still doing as well as I think we possibly can, and doing a lot better than a lot of trusts. There were definitely governors who were saying that they didn't feel engaged, their meetings had all just been cancelled, and they didn't really know what was going on. So I was able to say that we were definitely not in that position. So that was really the outcome of it. But yes, as I say, they didn't talk in great detail about this buddying system on the session that I was at, but we can certainly have a look at that and see whether it's something that we can learn from somewhere else going on. That's it.
Thank you, Margaret. Is there anything you'd like to add, Norman?
Not really. It was my day was more about an overview of what's happening nationally and what issues are affecting the NHS, pretty much emulating what's happening at Chesterfield and probably around the country. I did a feedback questionnaire to them, and one of the issues I got with this with the NHS providers, on the virtual meeting I was on, there was upwards of nearly 300 attendees, and with the time given, it was impossible. Most people were just saying, well, our trust does this and our trust does that, and they're just reinventing the wheel. We don't need to say things like that. We all know what's happening in trust and why it's happening. What we need to do is get some positive information from these types of meetings to help us move forward. As with the buddying, they have promised that they will send all the notes of the meeting and any presentations that were done over to each individual. And now, obviously, that's going to take a week or two with the amount that attended. So I've made my views known to them that it's difficult enough with virtual meetings, but having that many people, even when, I don't know if Margaret experienced the same, we broke off into little breakout groups. Well, there weren't little breakout groups, they were quite massive, and not everyone got to speak. So if they're going to run them, they've got to be worthwhile. Otherwise, they're just doing something to tick another box, as they are with the Nightingale hospitals. Thank you.
If I could just come back on that, I have actually received my email. So if you haven't received yours, Norman, with all the paperwork, I should chase them up, because I've got mine. Possibly our breakout sessions were smaller. Maybe there was a smaller representation on that day. I think we were in a group of 15, and the person facilitating it did actually make sure that everybody had a chance to speak within that group of 15. So perhaps being the first day, maybe it was a bigger group than we had.
Yeah.
So, yes. But yeah, I should chase them for your paperwork if it hasn't come through, or your email.
Right, thanks, Margaret. I'll do that, because there'll be a lot of information references this buddy system. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you both. Zoe, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Helen. It was in relation to what you were talking about around the mental health support for staff, and so that's why I agree. There's so much out there. You know, nationally there's a fantastic offer, and then I think kind of locally as a system we've put together a fantastic offer. I think sometimes the trouble is almost so much that people get a bit lost in it. So we've been talking a lot about how can we help to summarise that for people just in a really easy format, and also I've been talking a lot at meetings with staff partnership committee and other places to say, can you just help us to get the messages out so we can signpost to whether that's a wellbeing lead or a HR partner or the special place on the intranet, and then somebody can help somebody make sense of it. So I'm also really conscious that you might hear about everything that's available, but if you don't feel like you need it at that time, you're probably not going to remember everything that we've said to you. It's at the time where you feel I need a bit more support now, that's when we need to make sure people know how to access it. So yeah, just to say I agree with what you said, and I'm quite aware of that at the moment, and thinking about how we can help to get the messages out there more, because there is so much, and that's from the apps to debriefing sessions with teams to one-to-one counselling and everything in between.
Helen, there was one item that really did surprise me, that and it really came out very early in the meeting, that the NHS is carrying something like 80,000 vacancies. Now that's a big percentage. I don't know if that's all clinical or other staff or whatever, but you know, when we look at all these people who are out of work and etc., and yet we're carrying that amount of vacancies, it's very, very surprising.
And quite typical in terms of the NHS is normally carrying a load of vacancies, but I think it's felt particularly acutely, if you'll forgive the pun, you know, in the middle of COVID. Krishna.
Thank you. Just to come back on a comment that you made earlier, Helen, about we could perhaps learn from some of our other customer-facing services. Certainly, there will be a campaign to, you know, there will be a lot of people who are currently out of work who have been in customer-facing roles, whether that be sort of restaurants, sort of jobs or whatever, and there will be a national campaign. So this is about, if you've not thought about working in the National Health Service, how can we support you to see if this is a role that you would be keen to do, and how would we support? So normally we've taken people who've got qualifications on health and social care, but actually being a little bit more mature and having that life experience is actually, you know, really would equip you to be able to do a lot of roles that you might not have thought about doing. So I think there is some bit of joint thinking about that. So there will be something coming out to try and make sure that we can capture all that sort of energy and to try and reduce those vacancies.
Very good. Thank you, Krishna. Very encouraging. Now, I wouldn't like you to think I'm getting soft to my old age, but I'm just about to declare a 20-minute tea break. Not because I think you need 20 minutes to make or drink tea, but it might be positively luxurious, and it would also facilitate our colleague Julie Clift joining us for the quality accounts and the care accreditation item. She was anticipating joining us at 3 and will be available then. So my suggestion is you have time for tea and a biscuit, and that you leave your machines running, but that you come back and we'll start again promptly at 3. And I feel sure that we will still finish the meeting on time, because we're making good time otherwise. So enjoy. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the break. I know it wasn't good for my waistline. I've had a rather delicious slice of chocolate cake that I probably could have well done without, but was much appreciated nevertheless. So hope you're all similarly refreshed. We've now got a couple of substantive items, the next one of which is the quality accounts. So I'm hoping that our colleague Julie has managed to join us. Are you with us, Julie? Julie Clift with us. Very good. It would appear that Julie's maybe not with us. So in the first instance, I'm going to go call to introduce the item, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Put my camera on. Thank you, Helen. I'm just trying to get it up. Obviously, it's a sizable document, as always, and we're very constricted by sort of the ask nationally about what our quality account will look like. I know it's been through a number of iterations and lots of comments and feedback from yourselves, which has been gratefully received, but we're really at the final stages now to be able to sort of to do that final sign off. It went to quality committee, the quality assurance committee, so the week before last, who were happy. They just had a few minor amendments, so it really is open to if there are any more comments or suggestions before we have that final sign off.
Thank you very much, Krishna. We've got a raised hand. Is that you, Jane? No, it's not. Okay, the hand was obviously just appearing over you. Wait till we check whose hand it is. It's Lynn. Lynn.
Yes, I just wanted to say a really big well done. I thought it was a great document, and I was really pleased to see that the hospital was ranked first out of 195 trusts for nutrition and discharge in the National Dementia Audit. So I thought that was really, really commendable. I think we've done amazingly well with that. That's just all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn. I think, Lynn, I might also use this as the appropriate opportunity to convey the extent of the gratitude, appreciation and heartfelt thanks that were expressed by governors about the care that colleagues are giving to patients during this time. It was mentioned by a number of colleagues during our pre-meeting, both from experience that's been related to them by constituents, from experience of family members and from personal experience. So that came across like really loud and clear, and I think in the context of the quality accounts, which reflects on the whole of that period, it's a really nice opportunity to convey that to our executive colleagues. So a big well done, and thank you not only on the quality accounts but also on the quality of all that feedback we're getting. That's bearing out very much what we're reading in the document in front of us. Anybody else want to come in on this? No, in which case I think we can consider the quality accounts approved, and thanks to Krishna and also to Jane for all the work that the Quality Assurance Committee have done in the preparation of these. The shame Julie's not on the call to take her applause. And
she's joined now, Helen.
Oh, bless you.
Sorry, I'm late. Julie, I hope you caught the end of that in terms of everyone's thanks and appreciation for a job well done.
Thank you.
We're about to go now to the Ward Assessment of Care Excellent boards, please. So you again, Krishna.
Yes, it's obviously has been some work in progress. So I was just going to hand over to Julie for some of, and I think it's sort of work in train, and I think it's about trying to give us some visible transparency at the sort of front of all of our wards that's consistent, that gives clear indication about our care and commitment to patients, their feedback, and also the really good work leading in sort of with the academy about some of our quality improvement projects as well. So Julie, I didn't know if you just wanted to sort of go through our ask and our wanting some support from our fellow governors really in trying to refine the prototype that was sort of sent out.
Yeah, thank you. So you'll have seen the workup of the ACE board, hopefully that was emailed out. What we wanted really was any comments. Like Krishna said, this is taken a lot of work pulling everything together, but we really hope it'll be something where staff will be able to use it to celebrate the successes. I think what we've had previously are very much who's on duty today, and these are our audit results, which doesn't always tell a full story. What we're hoping to do here is these are the staff around today. There'll be pictures of staff on there, room for the wards to put their ward mission or their statement, putting their improvement objectives on there, looking at what they're hoping to do and what they want to celebrate as a team. And then going on to the bottom row, we have been working with one of our providers, Civica, to draw up templates. So each of the boxes at the bottom, the infection control, friends and family and patient-centred assurance will all be the same sort of format, very much. This is where we were last month. This is what we've done about it. This is how we're hoping to improve, showing that improvement journey. The results of the ACE assessments, which used to be the care accreditation, so the wards can celebrate that and then have their certificate on there. We are looking to standardise these across all the inpatient wards initially, and then there is a vision that we're still working through to have something very similar in all of the outpatient areas and day case areas. And then the final step of the process would be to have very similar but a bit larger boards at all the entrances to the hospital, saying that this is what we know that we're good at. These are the things that as a hospital we're looking to improve over the next month, and look at the boards at the area you're going to see their own personal improvement story. We have worked very closely with staff on the shop floor to develop this. Within the next week, we're going to be looking to go and speak to some inpatients about this, see if it makes sense to them, what they'd like to see on there that's perhaps not on there at the moment. But we wanted to give you as the Council of Governors the opportunity to review it and come up with any improvements or suggestions.
Thank you very much, Julie. That's very helpfully introduced. Norman.
Hi, Julie, for that. It's something that I think when we were doing ward visits as governors, it's something we commented on quite regularly. That there are boards, you know, as the entrance to the wards, and it does show the staff, and it's good for visitors to know who the staff are and who's looking after the families. And I thank you for that. It's obviously someone's listened, and as long as these boards are in prominent places and not hidden out of the way, we've discussed it before in governor groups that simple pictures make a lot of, you know, speak 1,000 words, don't they? And we've said that if we keep it simple, then people will look at it.
Yeah.
A simple thing like how many people go through the hospital in a year or within a week or whatever, and people think, oh goodness me, I didn't know that. So it's information that can be put out there quite simply, but it's really, really important. And I think on the wards, if it's commonplace throughout the wards, and they all reflect each other, so that, you know, I might be going onto a ward to visit one patient, onto a different ward to visit someone else. And if the standard's the same, I think it's very, very helpful. So well done. I think it's a credit to you, and it's a big leap forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Norman. Luke, please.
So, in this, my colleague Stacey has been heavily involved with it, and it was only yesterday I said to her, "Oh, it's coming out, it's in the governors' meeting," and I got really excited about that. So brilliant, thanks for bringing it here. Kind of just some thoughts. I think it's a fab idea. It's absolutely brilliant. But one of the areas which I think we need to definitely get right is today's staffing, and I just really want to make sure that we definitely cover everyone on there so we don't miss anyone. So one of the people which I suddenly thought was maybe like admin or something like that. We don't want anyone to suddenly feel like they're not part of that wards team. Yep. So it'd just be really just to make sure that we're not missing anyone from there. And I guess it's great we've got AHPs on there, but I'm aware there's lots of other people. So and I guess just one other thought would be, and I guess it would be good to get the views of the rest of the governors. But where we've got, say, RN, AP, HCA, things like that, just making sure that the public know what they are.
Fair point.
So, and I'm not sure. Maybe everyone does now after COVID, but it's just a consideration really. And the fact that you wanted to put them then around in outpatients and spread something similar across the whole trust, I think it's brilliant. So yeah, great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Lovely to hear your endorsement and enthusiasm for that. Margaret, please.
Hi. Echo what my colleagues have said prior to this, but certainly what Norman said about placement of these sort of things. I mean, there have been things on wards before, but if they're on corridors where people are walking past, nobody's going to feel comfortable standing to actually have a look at that. So I think we need to think really hard on each area where this information is going to be placed, so people can actually take time to sit and look at it. Does to date as well. Yeah. So that was another failing of some of the other information that we'd find when we were going on to ward visits, that you look at it and say, oh yeah, you know, to say how many pressure ulcers or whatever they'd had, but then it was about 4 days out of date, and you think, well, that doesn't tell me, you know, anything. So it's a matter of how these things are actually going to be kept up to date. But I think the concept is brilliant. So yeah, and echo what Luke said about inclusive of all staff, because there are lots of other people, and I don't think patients will know, visitors will know what RNs and APs are particularly. So I think we just need to do some tweaks, but yeah, well done.
Thank you, Margaret. I might come in on the back of Margaret, if I may, please, not least of all in terms of the accessibility of this. So I'm absolutely delighted with the initiative, and particularly the commitment to following through with up-to-date, relevant, you know, easily understood information. I just wonder, though, as a board who's recently considered their digital strategy into this corridor and whatever place, our app at the touch of a button, so we could sit with our cup of
I think we might have lost you, Helen. You're breaking up quite badly there.
I'll try again. I was just saying that it's a fabulous initiative. I wonder if it could be augmented by being available digitally on an app, so that when we have a cup of tea first thing in the morning, we could just have a little look and see what was happening in each ward in the hospital at a glance. And it would also address some of the issues Margaret raises about it's not always possible to stand and have a look. And I just feel that that would do a number of things, and it might also be a portent of our ongoing commitment to getting more real-time patient feedback readily accessible digitally. And as this information is at least static for the period of a shift, it might be a really helpful step in that direction. So if we could ask you to have a think about that too, that would be really good.
Yeah. Yep.
Good. I'll just have a check. Yes, I think we have. And very good. Request from Michael that we include staff photos. And question from Norman about hospital website. I suppose for those who haven't got the app addiction, that's a good addition as well. Thank you very much. Very good. So thank you for joining us, Julie, and thanks again for your hard work on the quality accounts. And we're now going to move on to section 10 of the agenda, which is the consent items. In consent items today, we've got minutes of the meeting of the 3rd of September, the performance update, and the constitution and standing orders. I haven't had any advance notice of any governor wanting to raise any issue on the consent items, and as such will deem them noted and approved. So thank you for that. That brings us on to items for information. Can I check, please, if there's any items of other business? Wouldn't appear to be so, in which case I will move on to just, oh, sorry, Lynn, you've got a question on the Constitution.
Yes, thank you, Helen. Sorry, I'm not very quick at typing. I've actually, it's not a question, it's just one or two comments. When I read through it, I picked up on page 14, it actually says Derbyshire Voluntary Association, and that should read Derbyshire Voluntary Action. If somebody can just make a note of these, thank you. On page 83, now I haven't got the paper in front of me, but I've made a note that says on page 83, somewhere, should it say, and from time to time, varied by agreement with? There must be a sentence in there that doesn't read to make sense to me. I don't know whether anybody can find that. That's just somewhere on page 83.
Gillian's just messaged to say that she's noting all of these down there.
Okay, thanks, Gillian. And also, I noticed that we've cross-monitor out and put NHSI in. Now on page 84, monitor's mentioned again twice, and that hasn't been changed. So in the capitals on the left under Deputy Chair, we mention monitor. And also in the paragraph on the right of that, it says Monitor's Code of Governance. So I'm assuming that all of those should be changed to read NHS and I. Is that okay?
Well, I think we need to put the £5 in the post and reflect slightly shamefacedly that we've had to leave you to pick those up, Lynn. But thank you very much for doing so.
My proofreading skills. Thank you very much. Okay, that was all. That was all.
Much appreciated. Thank you. So that brings us on then to item 12. We've been AOB, so I don't think we have any, unless you're going to gesticulate wildly now. No, in which case we go to items for information. So the work program's there for noting, please. The next meeting, I mean, it seems so far away, doesn't it? But I'm sure it'll be upon us before we know, is on the 3rd of February. But we do have a joint Governor Ned get together in December. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. Can you, Nicola?
Yeah, the 16th of December.
16th of December. So we will see each other this side of Christmas, and of course that will be a really nice opportunity for us to say our farewells and give our thanks to Denise on the 16th. Did you want to come in, Lynn? You're on mute, Lynn. You're having a great chat with yourself.
Sorry, yes, that was what I was going to mention, whether we were going to have the opportunity to say goodbye to Denise. I just feel it's such a shame that she's leaving at this time when we'd have some sort of get together, wouldn't we? But I think it's important that we don't miss that opportunity.
Yeah, there's also Janice as well that will be leaving us after 9 years full term, so we'll definitely be planning something on the 16th. Greg, I've just seen your note. We haven't sent an invite out yet because we're still trying to make final arrangements, but as soon as I've got that sorted, I'll share those with you.
Very good, thank you very much. And as you say, Len, I couldn't agree with your sentiments more. It's really important that we give Denise a proper send-off commensurate with the huge contribution she has made to the Trust. So we will do our level best in the current constraints. And then that brings us to the review of the meeting. So just before we go around the table, so to speak, to do a review of the meeting, I'm going to come to Derek, who's got his hands up. Question in connection to the answers, definitely. And Nicola will be in touch about that soon, Norman. Derek? You're on mute, Derek.
How's about that?
Very good.
Well, yeah, just to say that, as always, we've got through an awful lot of information today, and I feel on this occasion it's all been relevant stuff, and I'm going away feeling that I do know what's happening at the hospital, and everything's under control. And from the notes that I've been writing, I've got a lot to mull over now with my second cup of tea, perhaps, and there we go. It's been a good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek, and thank you for leading off with reflections on the meeting. Norman?
Just to back that up, really, that again, at these virtual NHS provider meetings, lots and lots and lots of governors saying that they didn't feel involved. I can assure you that that's not the case at Chesterfield. I feel really involved. The information that comes out from the board and other members is quite refreshing. I feel as though I work at the hospital, I know exactly what's happening there. So thank you all for that.
Well, thank you, Norman. It takes two to make that sort of relationship work, so that's appreciated. Luke saying it's been a well-focused meeting, and Margaret pointing up the fact that quality of the technology can be a bit hit and miss. So we'll continue to valiantly battle on that front, Margaret. And thank you for the communication shared with governors, so that's appreciated. Athol saying it's helpful and insightful. Any other hands in terms of people wanting to share views about how today was? Can I ask if our executive colleagues feel that today and this afternoon, I appreciate it's been a big investment of your time. I hope it worked for you.
Yeah.
Some nods.
Yeah. Disappointed not to have chocolate cake at the break, Helen, but that's the disadvantage of virtual meetings.
I might have to post it round for the 16th. See what we can do on that score. Oh, you've got me going now. I'm sure you can still buy those boxes that you used to send a wedding cake in, if anybody's old enough to remember that. I used to like sleeping on it as a child. Apparently it made you dream of weddings. I became less frivolous as I got older. Very good. I think on that score, that's probably enough self-disclosure, and I should draw the meeting to a close. And thank you all very much for your participation, your very full participation as ever. We enormously appreciate your support, and your challenge is constructive as it always is, and really important at all times, and particularly at this time. So enjoy the rest of your afternoons, and thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.